Am I wrong for telling my husband to stop disrespecting our surrogate? I, 34 female, and my husband, 37 male, Hunter, suffered from fertility problems. We recently decided to get a surrogate who is a friend of a friend. We were busy getting everything done legally, and we already had a contract in place. My egg was used, so no worries in this regard, plus our surrogate is a respectful, kind woman who's been keeping her part of the contract intact. But it's my husband Hunter who's been starting to act strange. I've noticed that he's been focusing all of his attention on our surrogate, like skipping work to visit her or get her things that she didn't ask for, chat with her all the time on social media, and also constantly offering to do things for her, like drive her places and sometimes even invite her out or offer to repair her stuff for her. She complained to me about this and even told me about things he's been doing that I didn't even know about, like bringing her gifts. I tried speaking to him about what this looks like, but he said he's doing what he's doing for his son and not for her. Still, I asked that he tone it down and respect the woman's space. He got mad at me and accused me of being jealous of the woman. I knew it was going this way. He got mad at me and accused me of being jealous of the woman who's carrying my own child and said that this makes me look bad. He has a crush on her. I feel like guys have this weird thing, like he's infatuated that he got another woman pregnant that's not his wife. You know, like that kind of weird shit. I said our surrogate was the one who complained about his behavior, and he said this wasn't true. Apparently this made him somewhat angry, so I gave him time to cool down a bit. Yesterday our surrogate called me saying that Hunter came over and told her guests to leave. I asked why, and she said that he wanted to show her the $9,000 car he bought for her. I was shocked. She said that she declined the card and asked him to leave, but he started arguing with her about using public transportation and risking our baby's well-being. I was fuming. I called him demanding him to get home, and he eventually did. Once he got back, we started fighting, and I yelled at him saying that he's been nothing but disrespectful and overstepping and inappropriate towards our surrogate. Again, he explained that the car wasn't for her, but to ensure that the baby is safe. I told him to stop disrespecting the woman and stop using the baby as an excuse to stomp all over her boundaries. He ranted about how he was just trying to make this work and that I should do the same, if not more. He accused me of not loving our son as much as he does, but this isn't the way, and putting $9,000 for a car without telling me. He left the house for a while, then came back and refused to speak to me. I might have been hard on him. He might have just been oblivious, so I'm less sure seeing his reaction now.
Story time about how my stepdad made my mom choose between him and my brothers. So a little background information, I was 13 years old and in 7th grade, and I had two older brothers, Josh and Alex, who were twins, and they were both 4 years older than me. Whenever I was 3, my dad left my mom for his dentist, and we never saw him again because he decided to start a whole new family with them. Now, because of that, my older brothers always felt like they had a specific role in my family, especially because the guys that my mom brought home, they would only last a week. Well, finally, my mom met this guy who's really nice, and she decided that she was going to get married to him, but he despised my older brothers. Mainly because before he moved in with us, my mom would not depend on him for anything. Anything that needed taken care of around the house, my brothers would do it. And we didn't have too much money while this guy was loaded. Like the one time my mom and this guy, who we're going to call Jerry, got into a fight. And it's a super long story, but pretty much all it made Jerry realize was that he did not have authority over my mother. And she didn't have to depend on him for anything because my brothers would always be there for her. Now, Alex was more of the shy one. Meanwhile, Josh was super hot-headed and didn't deal with anybody's bullshit. And fast forward, my mom and Jerry move in together. That's when we realized that Jerry was super abusive. And Jerry knew that he could pick on Alex whenever he wanted because he wasn't going to do shit. And most of the time, Josh wasn't home because he literally hated Jerry. The one time Alex came home and he did really bad on this one test. And Jerry was like, oh, he needs to learn discipline, blah, blah, blah. The next day, we all were sitting down for breakfast and we saw Alex come downstairs with a black eye. And that's whenever Josh flipped the fuck out. He grabbed Jerry, ripped him across the fucking table, and threatened him with a kitchen knife. And my mom called the cops. So like I said he needed to teach some discipline, so he literally beat the shit out of Alex. And we all didn't know until he came downstairs the one morning for breakfast. And that's whenever Josh flipped the hell out. He threatened Jerry with a knife. After that, my mom called the cops. I didn't really do anything but try to de-escalate the situation. But after that, Jerry called a family meeting down to the kitchen table. And he was like, I will not deal with this level of disrespect in this house. He was like, you need to choose between me or them. She was like, well, I'm not going to choose between you or my kids. And he was like, well, then you need to choose them leaving the house. They're about to be 18. They can leave and get their own place. So my mom ended up choosing Jerry because Jerry had a lot of money. And my brothers weren't really that mad about it because it got them out of the house. And my mom would send them a lot of money every month. And Jerry never knew about it. But now instead of him being abusive towards my brothers, he's way more abusive towards my mom.
My new friends are addicted to pain. I met them at a beach party. I wish I could say more, because lives are at stake, but the truth is, that's all I know. The house they told me they owned turned out to be rented, and I doubt the names they gave me were real. I still don't know why I stopped to stare at them that night. Maybe it was the contrast. 4 friends, socializing and laughing with people they loved around an intimate bonfire, while I was walking alone along the shore and reeking of vodka. I'd found out my girlfriend was cheating earlier that night. The only reason I even knew was because a guy named Brett left a post-it note about it stuck to the bottom of the toilet seat. I told myself I'd raise one shot to Brett, just one, in a trashy tiki bar about a mile back down the shore, and the rest is history. The crackle pop of burning driftwood carried a sweet, smoky smell down the beach. "Hey, you okay?" a copper-skinned girl with frizzy blonde hair called out. It took me a minute to realize that she was talking to me. I had no idea how long I'd been standing there. "Fine, thanks," I mumbled. I was glad the night hid how much I was blushing. I turned to continue my walk. "Come on over," she offered. "We've got some extra beers." She didn't have to tell me twice. When I entered the warm orange glow of the campfire, she introduced herself as Brandy, then gave the names of her friends Jude, Katie, and Kane. Jude was a 30-something bald white guy with lots of tattoos, who was handsome except for a smile that seemed a little too big for his face. Beside him, Brandy reclined against Katie, a pale quiet girl with dyed red hair, who held hands with Kane, a Korean guy who looked and dressed like a model. Maybe it's no surprise that they seemed as fascinated by me as I was by them. I was the stranger who'd walked out of the night, after all. Or so I thought. And with my toes buried in the warm sand, a cold brew in my hand, watching sparks crackling upward into the starry night sky, it was too easy to let my guard down. That's probably how I wound up back at their place, or rather, the place they said was theirs. It was a weathered wooden beach house with a wide windowed porch where our party continued. We threw some darts. Kane brought out some green supplies and chill music started playing from a speaker somewhere. I laid my head back against what I thought was a pillow, but turned out to Brandy's bare thigh. She smirked and rubbed my head. All was right in the world. I woke the next morning on the couch with golden sunlight in my face, a splitting headache, and Brandy wrapped around me beneath a half-fallen white blanket. At a beach bum breakfast spot a few blocks away, I tried to drown my hangover in whipped cream, blueberry syrup, and about a gallon of free refill black coffee. But as I ate my pancakes, I realized that there were 2 conversations going on around me. One I was included in, what I thought of life in this town, a funny story about Kane's mom, Katie's complaints about her work, but there was another conversation, too. One that my new friends shared among themselves with intense glances and whispers that I couldn't make out. Finally, Jude proposed that we go someplace where we could keep the party going. He knew the owner of a bar with a psychedelic basement where we could all trip together. Since the owner himself was the supplier, there was no risk of getting caught. I had my doubts. I'd never done anything heavier than weed, but it wasn't like I had any plans for the rest of the day. It didn't take much more than Brandy's toes caressing my leg to convince me to leave with Jude and the rest of them. The bar was one of those places that's so expensive it's impossible to tell what it is from the outside, just a name engraved on an opaque glass door. The black marble floors and dark wood furniture made the place feel as dim as a cave after the bright coastal sun, but Jude led us down a side stairway with a confidence that told me he'd done this before. Once my eyes adjusted to the light, I realized that there were huge works of art on the basement wall. The owner has a lot of unorthodox interests. Very avant-garde, Kane explained. But the drugs are free, and the experiences he puts you through, they're out of this world. You just gotta try it for yourself. The owner. I could hear the capital A in his voice. There was something ominous about it. I leaned in to inspect the art. Photographs? They couldn't be. No person could go through what I was seeing in those images and survive. Right? I leaned in until my nose was nearly touching the sickening sight. A pale, bald man hanging from hooked chains that emerged from his body like spines on some kind of nightmarish deep-sea creature. The expression of ecstasy on his face was so intense it hurt to look at. Blood-pink tears streamed down from his marble round, wide-open eyes. There was no doubt about it. I was looking at a photo of Jude. Behind me, I heard the sound of clothing rustling and falling to the floor. I could see right away that Jude still had the hooks. They were permanent features anchored into his naked skin. I inadvertently took a step backward, and as I did, I made the mistake of looking at the next enormous photo on the wall. It was Katie. She was pressed against a human-sized grid of tiny metal pins, like the kind I used to make molds of my hand with as a kid. These ones, however, must have been sharp. Wherever any of the tiny barbs touched Katie's fully exposed skin, a droplet of blood had formed, and like Jude, her face was twisted into an expression of unbearable joy. In front of me, the real Katie disrobed as well. I could see firsthand the thousands of almost invisible pinprick scars covering her pale body. The 2 of them looked at me strangely, as though they were surprised at my reaction by being suddenly confronted by a pair of nude people in a basement torture porn art gallery. Those whispers, like the rustling of birds' wings, started up again. "You okay, hon?" Brandy asked. She'd approached me from the side while I was distracted in a way that made me think disquietingly of pack-hunting animals. She, too, had shed her clothing like an insect shedding its shell. Insects. A word that I knew I'd associate with Brandy from that moment on. In her photo, she was covered by an unbelievable variety of biting, stinging bugs. She reached out for the photographer like a ragged mummy made of centipedes and wasps. Her crimson lips opened wide through the swarm in a moan of pleasure. "You don't look too good, man." Kane put a hand on my shoulder. How had he gotten behind me? I glanced at his photo. The hanging cage, the white-hot twisted metal, it was too horrible to describe, especially when I could see the corresponding scars on his muscular body. There was something else as well. Another frame further down the wall. An empty one. Waiting, I supposed, for my photo. I stammered, "I think I should go." Behind me, the basement extended into darkness. The polished floor was clean / too clean / like it was used for something vile that got cleaned up often. "You've been through a lot." Brandy grabbed my wrist. Her grip was light, but tight enough to hold on if she'd wanted to. "We can see it in your eyes. That's why we invited you here. The experience will be good for you." "It was for us, we're like a family now," Jude agreed, his awful chains clinking. Behind him, I saw with an awful sinking feeling that the door was barred. The owner takes your greatest fear and turns it into pure bliss. I could see in Brandy's eyes that she believed every word of what she was saying. It was the blank glare of the truly brainwashed. It's a truly transformative experience. "Come on. Let us open your eyes / My eyes kept darting from the barred door to Jude's bulky form standing between me and escape. I just have to play along. And then when they let their guard down, "Oh, okay," I smiled weakly. "I mean, it sounds cool. I just saw those pictures and got a little freaked out, you know how it is." Jude's face broke into that too big grin. Brandy hugged me. Kane started massaging my shoulders, and the whispering quieted down. Katie went over to some sleek cabinets in the corner and came back with a clarion full of something that gave off a thick blue smoke with a smell halfway between cloves and eucalyptus, like nothing I'd ever known. There was something horrible about the grinning clay faces on the ancient urn. Like they were urging me to just give up control of myself and submit helplessly to whatever fate awaited me. I felt Kane lifting my shirt off. Katie put her lips against one of the urn's clay mouths in a grotesque parody of a kiss and sucked in a lungful. When she exhaled, smoke the color of glacial ice swirled diabolically through her red-dyed hair. She was holding the urn to my lips before I even realized that Brandy had slipped my pants down. I gulped, too cold and frightened to be embarrassed, stepped forward, and pretended to take a big hit. I say pretended, but the stuff got inside me whether I wanted it to or not, and it was strong. By the time Jude, Kane, and Brandy had finished inhaling, I was already feeling it. My toes felt like they were hovering inches above the chilly floor, my senses were turned up to 11. Every shape that Brandy's fingernails traced along my spine sent electric shockwaves through my nervous system. But it wasn't enough. I wanted something more like what Jude was doing, hanging himself from the ceiling by that nest of chains. Or Kane and Katie, digging their fingers into each other's flesh. I wanted that. I wanted pain. Or did I? Maybe the drug just hadn't fully kicked in yet for me, the way it obviously had for my writhing, biting, clawing new friends. Or maybe it was the cold sound of footsteps in the dark and the sound of a camera tripod being placed that made me realize that the owner was getting something set up in the dark. A special torture, maybe one made just for me. If I had known how brief that burst of clarity would be, I would have moved even quicker. I ran for the door. When I lifted the bar, Kane grunted and tackled me to the ground. Only the blood from the wounds that Katie's nails had carved into his chest allowed me to slip through his grasp. By the time I had staggered up the stairs and out into the blinding sunlight, the itch was unbearable, and scratching it was pure pleasure. I rubbed my back raw on the rough concrete rolled in broken glass. Later, in the hospital, the police told me how I had been found, pressing the side of my face into hot metal and giggling at the sizzle of my skin. They had to strap me down to prevent my pursuit of pain.
My own memories of what happened after I left that awful basement are hazy at best. As far as what I'd taken was concerned, the doctors were stumped. Its chemistry didn't match the profile of any known drug.
It was a long time before I was able to explain what had happened to me, and by then, it was too late. The bar, it turned out, was still under construction. There was no owner apart from a development agency. The basement had already been emptied and bleached clean. In the meantime, however, it seemed that my new friends had found another victim. When I saw the article title while scrolling through news in my hospital bed, I already knew. Local teen girl disappears from beach. I hoped she had at least enjoyed the bonfire as much as I did.
Am I the asshole for going on vacation with my friend and her family and getting a room for myself after they kicked me out? Disclaimer, this is not my story. I'm in college and my roommate from last year, Meg, whose family is really rich, said she could bring a friend on vacation. It was kind of awkward. I was her third choice, but her family vetoed the first two because they didn't want her bringing a boy or this other female friend of hers they didn't like. Her parents bought my plane ticket and booked the resort, which I was very grateful for. I saved a lot of money up so I could make sure I buy my own food and activities when I'm there and treat her family to dinner as a thank you for the ticket. But when the trip started, it was really bad. It was her, me, her mother, and her father, 2 of her father's friends, and 3 brothers going. On the flight, they all got first class and got me an economy seat. But I didn't say anything because why argue about a free ticket? The first night they went to a grocery store, it turns out they wanted to cook at the resort kitchen for the whole trip. And by they wanted to cook, it actually turned out they wanted me and Meg to cook. I wasn't warned about this. But it turns out her family is so traditional that they see cooking as a woman's job and her mom just had hand surgery. So it's me and Meg cooking every meal for 6 men and her mom, and I can't cook well. I messed it up. I undercooked the chicken and overcooked some steak, and her dad was angry with me. I told him that if he knew how to do better, he could pitch in instead of standing around criticizing. He said he was on vacation. I said that I was trying to have a vacation too, or did they invite me to be an unpaid domestic servant? His dad snapped at me and told me to get out of their suite and go home. I left and called the airline with my ticket. They let me put a passcode so no changes could be made to the flight without it. I then went to the resort desk and got an affordable room. I went sightseeing and relaxed on the beach for 3 days until Meg's parents ran into me. They did a double take seeing me on the beach. They said they thought I was going home and I said I decided to stay. They said I deceived them into thinking I couldn't afford a vacation.